You guys just read chapter 13? Awesome, good job guys. Chapter 14 is a very different story though. It's like very many slides. Okay, so again, there's a lot of information in chapter 14. If there's anything you guys don't get, ask. I will do my best to fumble around and like answer it. So here we go. So document structure. How many of you guys have heard about the document? Okay, how many of you guys have heard about the DOM? How many of you guys know what the DOM is? Oh, snaps, okay. Very good, very good. Okay, so you can imagine an HTML document as a nested set of boxes, right? Tags such as body and / body and close other tags, which in turn contain other tags or text, okay? It's very straightforward. Here's an image. HTML at the top, that's the parent, right? And then we have the head element with a child tag called title, with some content inside that says my homepage, right? So all the relationships between these elements have a parent, child, and sibling relationship, right? That's pretty straightforward, right? Okay, and again, I say write a lot so I can see you guys doing this or doing this. So don't think I forgot what words to use, it's just, okay, perfect. So you guys will see that a lot in the next few slides, okay? So the document object model, or the DOM, is the data structure the browser uses to represent the document, and it follows this shape, okay? And now we have a slide with an image. For each box, there's an object, which we can interact with to find out things such as what HTML tag it represents, and which boxes and text it contains. This representation is called the DOM, okay? How many of you guys have tried, and it might be a good idea, if you have your laptop in front of you, pull up a browser and open up the console. But how many of you guys have tried looking at what document prints out? It's not what you would think it would spit out. And we have a slide that talks about the difference between what it spits out and then, for example, JavaScript, right? What you think an array is and what a node list is. It's not the same thing, but it looks like the same thing, okay? So again, this is what the DOM looks like. Document, the root element, which is HTML, which is the highest element, right, that wraps everything else, right? Then you have your head, your body, your footer, and so on. All your elements, right? Does this make sense? It should look familiar to a lot of you guys.
Where's window fall in that?
So window is the parent of document, right? That's the browser.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was curious because
yeah, no.
we had that discussion
Perfect.
on this.
And we do have a slide for just that. So, perfect. Okay.
Just when you started to think JavaScript was okay, we had that discussion.
I know. Totally just, oh.
But you know what? It kind of fits into what Matt is always preaching about Blazor.
Yes.
Not to help him out because he needs no help. But the DOM, right? It wasn't built for JavaScript.
Right.
So other languages can use it.
Yeah.
So I know we had this discussion, me and Bass, on Thursday. So yeah, so we'll get to it. So trees. We call it data. How many of you guys have heard about trees in the sense of computer science? Okay, perfect. Okay, cool. So we call a data structure a tree when it has a branching structure. It has no cycles, meaning a node may not contain itself directly or indirectly, and it has a single well-defined root. In the case of the DOM, document element serves as the root. Okay? Now, I did spend some time going onto the console on the browser, looking at document and then comparing that to document element. You guys should too at some point. You'll see that it's not the same thing, and it produces some weird things. So, yeah, you'll see. So do we get what a tree is? Right? We have an image right here. Again, it's the same image, just different boxes organized different ways. So HTML has two children, head and body, which have a bunch of other children. So head has title, and the console within title, same thing. Okay? You guys have seen this before, right? Perfect. Okay. So node type. Each DOM node object has a node type property, which contains a code or a number that identifies the type of node. So for example, elements have code 1, which is also defined as a constant property, node.element node. Okay? I don't think that made any sense, but I'll show you right here. And I have to zoom in. Okay, can you guys see document.body.nodeType? Yes? Okay, if you guys don't want to talk, do this at least. Perfect. Okay, so you see how it prints out 1?
No. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Please don't play with me, is that you? Okay, okay, wasn't you? Perfect. So document.getElements by tag name, and then I pass in the tag body. it'll return a list, right? And I want the first one. And then I do no type. Same thing. 1. Do we know why it prints out 1?
No.
Because it found that property?
Because it's an element, right?
And so element is 1?
So anything that's an element, any node that's an element, the type, it returns 1,
Oh.
right? And that's the problem with the DOM, is that it wasn't, again, like I said, it wasn't built for JavaScript, so there's no like native way to say, okay, give me this type easily.
So it's not, that number doesn't represent the number of branches?
No,
Oh,
it's just the
okay.
type of
It's
node
just
that
the
it is.
type, I got
It's
you.
either an element, or it's a text, or a comment, or so on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what's 0? Just document?
I don't know.
Is there, I was just curious.
Might be root. That's a good question.
Hmm.
The book covers elements, text, and comments. So comments are 8, and then I don't know. You guys should have read the book.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I also did type of, and then I wanted to see what type it was, and it's an object. P tags, same object. But you guys see when I try to get all the elements of the type tag name P, it returns a collection, right? An HTML collection. So it's not returning, it's not giving me an array or an object, right? Now, if I go through each one of these items, oh, I forgot, you guys can't see my cursor. So if you guys go through each and every one of these, you guys will get something like this, right? So it has a bunch of different properties. Properties like access key, align, node type as well.
Tell me the difference between a collection and an array.
That's the problem, they're not,
Well, I mean,
oh,
you just made the distinction.
here's the difference. You know how arrays have methods like slice and so on?
Okay.
HTML collections don't.
Okay.
Right?
Gotcha.
So that's kind of what throws us into this whole.
No, I mean, it totally makes sense in other languages, I just wasn't
Right.
sure what the difference was.
Okay, perfect.
in JavaScript.
So again, if you guys play with this, you'll see that it has all these different properties, okay? And each item is identified by a digit, okay? So it should look familiar, but it's not the same thing. Okay? So again, DOM design. The DOM wasn't designed for just JavaScript. It tries to be a language-neutral interface that can be used in other systems as well. Not just HTML, but also for XML, which is a generic data format with an HTML-like syntax. Okay? How many of you guys, except Fast, because I know he's ancient, has you said it, I didn't say that, has worked with XML before? Okay. So, huh?
So that was fun, right?
Okay,
For the
perfect.
project?
Yeah, I've never liked XML. I've seen XML for like
I don't either.
RSS feeds. I don't even know why people use RSS feeds, but yeah. So port integration. So consider the child nodes property that have element nodes in the DOM. Yeah, I don't know what that. I added an extra hat. This property holds an array-like object with a length property and properties labeled by numbers to access the child nodes. It is an instance of the node list type, not a real array. So it does not have methods such as, like I said, slice and map. So, yeah, so if JavaScript wasn't weird already, then there's this. So, yeah. So let me zoom in. So again, document.getElements by tag name, and I put in body. There's only one body, right? So it returns an HTML collection with just one item in there, right? If I did the p tag, it should return all the p tags on the page. HTML collection of all of them, right? So then I said, give me the first item in the HTML collection, child nodes, right? And this is what it returns. So this is everything inside what? Body, right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Get elements by, so obviously that's a method inside document. Can you specify or look for tags inside a element? So like if you went child, right down to child, can you do
Right.
get elements by tag inside of that child?
So we have something that makes it easier, especially if you know about CSS selectors. We have query selectors, right? And we'll cover that one. But it makes more sense to use it for that. But yes, you could. You can, what is it called? Chain them, right? So, yeah. And then same thing as the previous image. Type up comes out to object, right? And then we see the keys for the child nodes, and same, 0 and 1, nothing special. So again, you guys have access to this presentation. It's on Slack. So if you guys want to take the code and play around with it, you're more than welcome to. Okay?
Are nodes, so I noticed at the end of that one you called child nodes, or child node, right? Is a node the same thing as an element?
It's a way to represent it on the console, right?
Okay,
So
just curious.
yeah, there is a difference because when you access the element directly, you have different properties that you can access. When you access the node, you have, again, different properties and methods. So yeah, there is a difference. Okay. So go back. Okay, so traversing. Do we all know what traversing means in the context of the DOM? So it means going from one element to the next, right? So just trying to find something, right? Does that make sense?
It just means going through.
Yeah. So when you guys see that in the future, it means going through the DOM, okay? So for example, we have body. If we want to see the child nodes, everything under body, like for example, H1, P, and the second P, those are all children of the body, right? Perfect. We do have these methods like first child, parent node, previous sibling, next sibling. We do have a couple of slides that shows you the different methods. We're not going to go and spend an hour on them or anything, but you guys will be exposed to them. So, okay. So root nodes. The document object is the root of every node of the DOM, right? This object is actually a property of the window object, that's,
Okay.
which is the global top-level object representing a tab in the browser. Okay, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Oh, here's a question then.
Okay.
So, how would you get, if the tab is the top,
Right, window.
how would you get the list of tabs if there's not something above
That's a
that?
good question. That's outside the DOM, I suppose, right?
Interesting.
I wonder if there's a higher level API
I
that
mean,
you
there's
use for that.
obviously a way, right?
Right.
So I'm
And then
curious.
again, like I don't even know if it's the same for, say, Chrome and then Firefox.
Uh,
So I'm assuming it should be different or slightly different. So,
Actually, for security reasons, there should better not be a way to get a list of tags.
Well,
you better not be.
There are
Well-
some browsers leak that, but you should.
my thought was if window, literally the window was the top, and then there were tabs inside of that, you know, a list of tabs, as children as well. But if tab is the top, how would you get the rest of your tabs, you know, to do
Talk about
whatever?
the tabs on the browser or tabs on an individual page?
Well, I don't know, he said window.
No,
Windows-
tabs, like browser tabs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it makes sense what
There
when you say for
shouldn't be
security
any
reasons,
exposure
sure.
outside that
Sure,
webpage.
Because I know when
Sure,
you-
but let's say you wanna write something that manipulates tabs, right, in your browser.
And I'm saying I don't think there's any exposure for that.
Well,
That's when you
I've
build-
definitely seen extensions.
Right,
that do
extensions,
it.
right? Because now you're working with the
But that's,
browser API.
yeah, that's not the
Yeah,
website.
that's-
Extensions
I
work
would
for
say
the browser
kinda like
itself.
when you
So
close
then,
out
so then the
Right.
level up from Windows.
Yeah,
would
thank
be
God that's
whatever
different,
the
yeah.
browser
That's an actual
was.
extension
That's
because
from the browser.
when building tests for Firefox features, we
Yeah.
do have access to the API for the browser.
Yeah.
Right.
But from the web page itself, we can't.
So yeah, I think the up from
That's a
that
good
would be
question.
whatever the executable is.
Yeah.
Firefox.exe or whatever.
There was-
But, so I think the limitation is to that specific page or on that tab. So
Right.
not all the tabs.
Right, I'm just saying if you wanted to write an extension, but that kind of makes sense. If you write an extension for Chrome,
Mhm.
right, that's from the executable Chrome, thus you have access or would have access.
Right, so I'm
to-
assuming it's a whole different API.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
I know for a fact that you're not supposed to, just because of some of the security things I've read, security bulletins about JavaScript. There was a bug patched in JavaScript probably 6 to 12 months ago, where it was actually allowing data to pass from tab to tab using a JavaScript in one window. And it was a security bug. It was letting hackers, basically scammers.
Was that on a specific browser or just in general?
It was a JavaScript
Right.
problem, not a browser problem. They had to actually it was fixed in a release of JavaScript. And it was caught in, what's the browser for? It was caught in Tor. Tor's the one that caught it, but it affected Chrome. Google had an emergency patch for it. I'm assuming it affected Safari and everything too, but
Okay.
this was 6 months to a year ago, maybe 18 months.
Maybe if you find the article, you can put it on Slack.
I didn't, yeah, I'll try. I
Perfect.
didn't even think anything of it at the time, but it was
That's
a
good.
while ago.
So, I don't know.
But it was a glitch in JavaScript that was allowing secure data to be accessed by groups it shouldn't be accessed.
But what kind of secure data?
You have the tabs open, you access credit card numbers.
Hmm.
You
And they're saved,
access logins, you access, it was enabling a keylogger
So
essentially.
it was letting you access the browser stuff.
Yes,
Okay, that's interesting.
it was allowing you to basically steal all the information from a different browser tab.
Hmm. Yeah. you're gonna
I
have to
could,
find
of course,
that.
I was just starting learning programming at the time, so I could have completely misunderstood it, but
Well, if you find it, post it.
I'll try to find it.
Sounds interesting. Maybe we do move away from JavaScript.
No, they fixed it. It was fixed immediately.
Just kidding, Beth. Don't get happy.
It's gonna happen whether.
No, it's not.
I mean, there's.
Eventually they'll change the Python script.
Awesome.
So the window object has access to such information as a toolbar, height and width of the window, prompts, and alerts. The document consists of what is inside of the inner window. Okay, how many of you guys have worked with the window object before? Perfect, okay. So here's a list of root nodes. So document, this is the node that you get, hashtag document. That's pretty much what it prints out. Document.document element, document head, and document body. Okay, these are used very often, so they get their own property inside of document. Okay, otherwise you would have to do like document get by tag name or something, right? And again, the type of node. This is a document node, and this is an element node, right? We talked about the different numbers. So fast, maybe document node is identified by 0. I don't know. So because element node is identified by 1. So okay, and this is what, when you look at window, this is what it prints out, right? You can see it has a bunch of different properties and methods and so on. So anything that you consider to be global, that's what it means to be global. Okay. So for example, let's see. Where is it? Alerts. You guys have used the alert method before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most annoying function ever. So yeah, so that's where it's found. So if you think about it, that's why.
That makes sense because it pops down like right off the.
Yeah. Okay, so the next few slides go over the different sorts of nodes. So we'll try to go over them pretty quick because it's data that you don't really have to memorize, just kind of process, right? So parent nodes. So the nodes in the DOM are referred to as parents, children, and siblings. Again, like we talked about, right? There's a relationship between them, depending on the relationship to other nodes. The parent of any node is a node that is one level above it, right? We're closer to the document in the DOM hierarchy. And there's two different methods that you can use to target a parent of an element, right? Parent node and parent element, okay? How many of you guys have used jQuery before? Okay, when you're traversing the DOM, it makes it very easy, right? And you don't have to memorize all these different methods or refer to them. There's easier ways to get them. I believe to get the parent node, you pretty much do dot parent, right? So yeah, it makes it a lot easier, but this is where all of that comes from, right? So parent nodes, properties, again, you can refer to the presentation. You guys have it on Slack. Parent node gives you the parent node, obviously. I'll go back. And then parent element gives you the parent element node, okay? So you guys can play around and see the differences between them. Okay. So here we go. So here's an example. We have a binding called HTML, which equals document element. So what kind of damn it, I almost gave you guys the answer. I think I pretty much gave it to you. Okay. So what kind of node does it give back? An element node or a node element, or is the answer here? Let me see. Okay. No, maybe. Okay. So if we log to the console HTML.parent node, it gives us hashtag document, right?
See.
If we do console.log HTML.parent element, it gives us no. Right? Does anyone know why?
Because that is the parent, that's the top?
The elements are the children of the parent, right?
Oh, I'm asking because I don't know. So.
No, wouldn't it be because it's at the top?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It's at the top, right? So there is no parent?
Oh,
Yeah, it is the parent.
That would be my guess.
I'd say that's a fair guess.
Hey.
so parent node, it gives you the whole document then, right? Because if you go into the console, I don't know if any of you guys have it open, but if you type in HTML.parent node, I mean this, right, and then parent node, you guys can see that it gives you the whole document. You click on it, it unfolds, and it gives you everything.
It's not gonna pull my computer.
No, it shouldn't. So I said shouldn't. So. Then we have a binding that we named P, document.query selector. Okay, and we'll cover query selector in a minute. But instead of doing something like get elements by tag name and then we pass it in P, we can do either query selector and it returns the first one that it finds, or we can do query select all or whatever. Okay, and it returns a whole list. Okay, but there is a difference, and we'll go over as to when you should use which one. Okay, and if we do console log and then we log to the console p.parent node, it'll return this right here.
Query select is from jQuery?
No,
Oh,
no.
it's just.
What I was saying is that jQuery makes it a lot easier. So instead of doing all of this, you would do like dollar sign or whatever. What's the name of that?
String interpolation?
Whatever, dollar sign. There you go.
What's the name of the dollar?
Okay, dollar sign. I was hoping there was like a fancier name for it, but okay, I guess dollar sign. And then you give it the identifier to it, and it returns everything. Meet up, Parker. We're gonna talk later. Okay, so next one. Okay, children nodes.
Dude, that's another employee.
I'm gonna talk to them later. I don't need those comments, Parker. The children of a node are the nodes that are one level below it. Any nodes beyond one level of nesting are usually referred to as descendants. Okay? The child nodes property will return a live list of every child of a node. You might expect the UL element to get 3 list elements. Let's test what it retrieves. So, here are the methods. Child nodes returns the child nodes, right? First, I mean, these are straightforward, guys. I'm not gonna read the right side. It returns the child node, the last child node, children nodes, first element node, last element node, right? Pretty straightforward. Does that make sense? Okay. There are times where you need to kind of find a node programmatically in case you don't know the specific selector for it. So these are very useful. Okay. And again, if you're used to jQuery, it hurts. So. Okay, so if I do document element child nodes, it gives me all the children of this right here. Oh, you guys can see this right here. Why is it sometimes you guys can't see my cursor, but not today? It's interesting. I think we figured it out last time, right? At
Your
some
mouse
point.
is on your thing, you gotta move it on, there you go.
Oh, thank you, Beth. The C# helped you, huh?
C.
Okay. Okay, so you guys can see it returns a node list, right? So all the script tags, and then the head. So it looks like an empty document. So. Okay, any question about that? No? I'm trying to get you guys to do this at least. No? Okay. I think instead of pizza, bring you guys coffee. Okay, so sibling nodes. The siblings of a node are any node on the same tree level in the DOM. Okay? Siblings do not have to be the same type of node. They can be text, element, and comment nodes. So they can all be siblings. Okay? Does that make sense? And here are the methods for that. Previous sibling returns the previous sibling node. Next sibling, previous element sibling, and next element sibling. Okay? Any questions about those? Now again, the whole reason for these different methods is to traverse the DOM, okay? To navigate through the DOM, okay? I think when you're interacting with the DOM, that might be the most difficult thing you ever do. Other than that, everything's pretty straightforward and easy, okay? So here's an example, document.head, next element sibling. Okay, the only other sibling that it had was body, right? Because they're both wrapped under HTML. Does that make sense? Perfect. Okay, and you can see that it returns the whole element for me. Okay, now if I do document.head.next sibling, it returns the node, right, instead of the element. Does that make sense? So we can see the difference, right, between node and element. Okay. I see a lot of straight faces. Some of you guys look angry too. Okay, cool. So finding an element. So now we get to talk about get element by class or by tag name and so on, okay? We're almost there. So the document interface has several useful methods to find elements on the document, okay? You can target elements by tag, ID, class name, and so on. These methods return a live list, meaning that it updates as elements are updated, okay? So remember that difference. Okay, these methods return a live list, meaning that it updates as elements are updated. So we can do by class name, by tag name.
That's interesting. So if you were iterating through one of these collections of nodes or whatever, and it updated in the middle of that, it wouldn't break anything?
I think it's referring to when you load things with JavaScript on the DOM, right? You get it the first time, you get a set, and then you do it again, and you get that same set
But you
instead of
gotta
the
call it
updated
again,
list.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So get elements by class name, tag name namespace, ID, and by name. Okay? Any questions about these? I'm pretty sure you guys have seen at least one of these before. Okay, now I saw some
All
of
of
these.
them.
Perfect. And here's an example. Document.getElements by tag name. We passed it in div, and it gave me 657. Yeah. So this might not seem like much. Modifying the DOM might not seem like a big issue, but we'll talk about why it's a big issue. And again, it's an HTML collection, right? So keep track of those little new keywords you guys see and everything. It'll all make sense once you put it all together. So query selectors. Query selectors allow you to select document elements that match the query you pass in. The difference between query selector methods and methods like document get element by ID is that the return list is not live. Okay? Okay, I see a lot of aha faces. Wonderful. Okay, query selectors. There's query selector, which returns the first one that it finds, and query selector all, which returns everything that it finds. Okay? Again, if you guys haven't worked with CSS before and these selectors, once you do, it'll make a lot more sense. You can utilize even pseudo selectors from CSS in these query selectors. So you can get super fancy with them. Okay, so we can see it in action here. Document.querySelector all, and I pass it into p tag, and it returns all 103 of them. Okay? Cool. So creating nodes. This is where we get into the whole kind of optimization of things. And you'll see in a second. So how many of you guys have experience with React? How many of you guys have heard of something called the shadow DOM? Okay, a few people have heard of that awesome term. Okay, sounds so mystical. You can modify a document in many different ways, such as adding a new node using a method like create text node, right? So the book has an example. I think it's the book, unless I got it from somewhere else. But at the top, we have a p tag, we have some text, we have some images. Then we have a function that, by the name of it, says replace images, right? It has a binding called images, and it's set to the element by tag name image. It iterates through all the images it finds, and what it does is it gets the attribute of alt. It gets it here, and it replaces it. Okay?
Iterates backwards through.
Yeah.
Any particular reason?
Starts from the last one down.
Any particular reason?
No,
Oh.
not at all. Nothing special. But yeah, I did notice that at first. So here's what it's doing, okay? It has the cat as an image, in the hat. Pretty funny, right? As images. When you click replace, it runs that function and it replaces the image with the contents of the alt tag. Okay, that's all it does. So if we go back, you can see that at the top, the cat PNG has alt of cat, and then the hat has an alt tag of hat, right? So that's all this function does. It iterates through them, gets the attribute, updates it, and so on. And you can see that right here, it's modifying the DOM, right? It's creating a text node and replacing it. So it's taking out one node and putting in another one, okay? And again, you guys can refer to this in the PowerPoint. So modifying attributes. You can access attributes and set or update attributes by using the get attribute and set attribute methods. Very straightforward, okay? The get attribute takes the parameter of the name of the attribute that you want to access in the element that you're using that method on. And then set attribute takes the name and the value you want to update it with, okay? If you don't have an attribute set yet, you can use the same method and you set it, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
I feel like I gotta ask you guys so I can get some feedback, yes, no?
You're doing great, man.
Okay, perfect. I feel a lot better now. Okay, so in this example, we have two bindings. One is set to document, get element by ID div1, and then imagine we have the HTML stuff up there. And then div1 get attribute align, right? So if we do alert align, it'll show the value of align for the element with ID div1, right? Very straightforward. Now, here in this example, we're showing you how to get the attribute. So document query selector button, and then I want to log that to the console, right? Since we haven't added the attribute name yet, we get null. Okay, cool. Here. We get null, right? So B, we get that element, which is a button. It returns the first button that defines. It tries to find the attribute name within B, which has been set to the button that it found. But then I go ahead and set the attribute of name to hello button, and I do this again here, and now it says hello button, right? That's all it is, nothing else, okay?
Do attributes serve as anything other than tags for an element?
Some of them have specific purposes. Like for example, image tags, they have the alt tag, the source tag, and so on. Yeah, so those are all considered attributes.
But you can just make up your own just for identification
Yes and no.
purposes?
Yes, you can, but no, you shouldn't.
Oh, okay.
Unless you're doing like a data attribute.
Okay.
Data attributes have a bit of flexibility, but they also have a naming convention to go by.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, like imagine if, yeah, it's a no.
Yeah, I imagine you would have to make sure that none of the ones you made up
Right.
are already in use, like
Right, so there are a couple you can't
That makes
use
sense.
because they're already in use. So the other thing you can do is style things. So you can modify CSS properties for elements in the DOM using JavaScript, right? So, let me see, I can zoom in here. So you guys can see document, we're getting the element here, and then we can do element.style, so we can access that right there, and then color, okay? Again, if you have experience with CSS, this will make a lot more sense, right? So the property that you pass it in, that's the property you are modifying. However, in CSS, you can do background dash color. Here, when you modify it with JavaScript, you have to do background color altogether, right? So it's a bit different. You can also, I believe, if I remember correctly, you can pass it in an object, or you can pass it in the name and as a string, and you can do it however you want. So, yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. I promise, in a few slides, there's something interesting.
Cool.
And it's not a cat image or anything.
So if you want to show us an image of a cat, we'd be fine.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind. Next presentation, every 5 slides, there'll be a cat. So positioning and animating. I know not everyone here is gonna go home and animate something, right? But figured I'd throw that in there. So the position style property influences layout in a powerful way. We can use this to create an animation. So the following example, and again, the reason I want to show it to you guys is because come hack day, you need this. Okay, you guys will see it. So it's not a quiz or anything, but the position style property influences layout in a powerful way. We can use this to create an animation. The following example displays a picture of a cat that moves around in an ellipse. Now, I'm not going to explain the code sample in detail, but I'll point out some different things. There is a method called Requestanimationframe, which I will explain what that does in the slide after that one. Okay? So I don't know how well you can see this, but so here at the top we have a p tag with an image of a cat, right? But you can't see the cat, so I'm very sorry about that. And then we have JavaScript. So what this is doing is, no, I'll go back. Okay, so cat. So we're selecting the image, right? Query selector image, it returns the first one that it finds, and there's only one, so it's going to return this. Okay, we're setting the angle to something that probably you know that I don't know. Some math right there. You like that explanation? I'm sorry?
You don't know what pi is?
Do I have to know that right?
3 point, I mean,
3 point something? Yeah, sorry. Anyways, back to when I looked smart before he talked. Function animate. So this is the function we're going to pass into Requestanimationframe. Okay? What this function does, it takes a time, last time, which is kind of like a counter. Okay? If last time's not equal to null, it updates. Do you guys remember what this does right here?
Put the cat on top.
Put the cat on top. Okay, so it styles the cat element, right? The top property. Okay? And then on this one, the left property. Okay? This right here is a function that tells the browser when to run an animation.
So those two, the cat.style top and left is basically telling you where to position the top left corner of the image on the box?
Yes. So remember that elements on a page, you can modify the top, left, right. What's the other one? I missed one. Top, left, down, yeah. All of those, all four of
But
those.
this is telling you where, because the cat is a container as well that contains the cat
Yes.
image, right?
Yeah.
So that formatting code is telling you where to put the top left corner of the cat image in the container it's in, right?
Yes. But keep in mind, without position relative, it's not moving anywhere. Because by default, if I remember correctly, elements are set to static. Anyone know?
Wait, I'm sorry, is that like a margin that you're setting?
No, the top and bottom
Yeah.
is the position of the element
Okay.
in relation to the document, to the, what is it, window?
Okay, so you got up and down business, and you got left and right business.
Yeah, so
Okay.
let's say that the whole window is the parent.
Yeah.
It'll start 0, 0.
Excellent.
Right here.
There's a really great animation actually for this on Wikipedia. If you look up sine or cosine, it actually shows how they're tracking the horizontal vertical position. All they're doing is changing the angle, and you can actually see separately and then combined how that traces a circle.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's this. It's this.
No, you know what? I know it's probably very interesting, but my little brain says no.
The default position is static.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, that
perfect.
makes sense.
So I wasn't giving you guys lies. Okay, cool.
Because otherwise, if that wasn't true, when you moved your window or whatever, then the position of the thing, so it's relative to that.
Yeah, but just keep in mind that if you guys want to move anything with top, left, or whatever, even without JavaScript or CSS, that needs to be set to relative. Okay? Perfect. So again, Requestanimationframe. This method tells the browser that you wish to perform an animation and requests that the browser call a specified function to update an animation before the next repaint. The method takes a callback as an argument to be invoked before the repaint. Okay? How many of you guys have heard about repaint before? Okay, what about reflow?
Oh, you said repaint?
Yeah, repaint.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and what about reflow? Perfect, so you guys will learn something today, wonderful. Okay, so these are things that React kind of takes care of for us, right? You guys know that the whole premise of React is that it doesn't update just everything just because, right? Only the elements that have changed. So, a repaint. So a repaint occurs when changes are made to elements, skin, that changes visibly, but do not affect its layout, right? So some examples include the outline, visibility, the background, or the color. And then according to Opera, repaint is expensive because the browser must verify the visibility of all other nodes in the DOM tree, okay? I don't know if that applies to all browsers, including, for example, Chrome and Firefox, but just so you know, a repaint is when something updates, right, as far as pixels go. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, here's the next one. Reflow. A reflow is triggered when a layout change has happened. Dimensions and positions of elements are recalculated, and a repaint is triggered, right? That sounds much more expensive than a repaint, right? Okay, examples that cause reflows include adding or removing content, explicitly or implicitly changing width, height, or font family, font size, and more, okay? Again, because it needs to recalculate everything, right? And then do a repaint. So again, repaint is essentially the update of pixels. While still taxing, it is less so than a reflow, as reflows include a repaint, along with all the recalculation, okay? So here's an example which will make a lot more sense. So we have this for loop here, right? And then in every iteration of this for loop, we're creating an element, a p tag, right? And in that p tag, we're adding some text. So we're calling the new p tag monster, right? And then we add to monster a text content. We say newly created paragraph element, right? And now, before we go on to the next iteration, we say document body, append child, and we're adding that new p tag, right? What do you think happens every time that we iterate?
It's creating the new whatever we just created, that content. It's
So-
adding it to the body.
Do you think this modifies the layout or just pixels?
So
Yeah.
that's not gonna have an animation, that's just gonna have like a whole bunch of cat pictures appearing, isn't it?
No, so just think about this one paragraph tag. Don't think about the other ones, just this one. All it's doing is creating an element, creating a paragraph element, adding text to that paragraph element, and then adding it to the
You're
body.
asking if it updates the layout?
Do you think it's gonna do, yeah, so is it gonna do a repaint or a reflow?
I think the repeat.
Reflow.
Reflow.
Yeah,
Right.
because you're gonna wind up with 100 different paragraph tags.
Right, now think about that.
But it's still in that thing, so you're just changing the flow, and you know you're not causing a repaint of the thing.
No, but that's the
Right?
problem, right?
No,
Every
it's doing
iteration,
the
you're doing a
every
reflow.
reflow.
Right? Every single iteration, it's not just once. So think about that. You're changing the layout, it has to recalculate, and then it has to repaint, and then it has to go again to the next iteration. That's very expensive.
So you'd
Now-
be better off doing 100 of those, create 100 whatevers and then add them all once, right?
Yeah, so that's where this comes into hand. So document fragments, right, are DOM nodes. They are never part of the main DOM tree. You can use them to create document fragments, append elements to them, and then append the document fragment to the DOM tree, right? So instead of us appending all those p tags to the actual DOM, we would append them to the document fragment. Once we're done, we append that document fragment to the DOM, right? And that fragment gets replaced by everything that's inside of it, okay? In the DOM tree, the document fragment is, okay, yeah, it's replaced by all its children, so.
Look at you doing optimization with JavaScript.
Anyways, so here's the example. So again, we have monster, we're setting it to document, create document fragment, okay? This is a very underused, in my opinion, method, which is wonderful, especially if you don't have the luxury to use React in a project, right? So remember that method right there. And we have a for loop, okay? In every iteration, we're creating a binding called new element, and it's a new p tag element, right? We're adding text to it, and we're appending that element to the document fragment. After the loop is done, and it has all the 100 little paragraph tags in there, now we can add it to the body. Now it only runs once, only one reflow, okay? We understand that?
Yeah.
Sounds good, right?
Hey, I'm curious, just from a computer science perspective, creating a fragment obviously uses a chunk of memory somewhere
Exactly.
outside of it.
It's stored in memory.
So I'm curious, what happens to that? I mean, even if you append it into something else, right?
Right.
Like, does that then become part of the document, and it's essentially like, I don't know, garbage collects or something outside of that?
So I don't know if it's garbage collected, like let variables,
Yeah.
where the after you,
Oh,
Oh, you have a question, answer, no?
Oh, I was gonna say, no, finish your.
I'm just curious, like, if you created a bunch of fragments and then, I don't know, didn't do
So
anything.
I don't know if they get cleaned up.
Huh.
Like, you know how we talked about let variables? They're using that block and then they're cleaned up?
Right.
I don't know. But everything that's inside it, yeah, it lives in the DOM now, after it's been replaced. So maybe they're cleaned up, but that's
So
something we can look
after
up.
it's appended, then it lives in the document, but until then it's.
Right. So the document fragment itself doesn't live in the DOM ever,
Right.
right? It's in memory. But I don't know, like you're asking, I don't know what happens after we use it up. So according to the text, it says it's replaced. So everything that's inside it gets thrown into the DOM, and then it doesn't say what happens to the fragment.
So you declare monster as a constant, but then you're appending stuff to it. So wouldn't that like change what monster is? So
You're not.
We're not changing what it is, right? We're not setting it to something else. We're appending to that object now, because it's an object.
Where did you declare monster as a constant?
At the
Oh,
top.
there we go, constant.
But you're not changing it.
That's-
After you get the fragment, you're just essentially saying, hey, I just want to chunk a space out here that's not part of the DOM, right? So,
Oh, okay.
That's a good question. Any other questions? We have like 30 more slides. So, oh, look at that, we're done.
yay!
Yeah, you guys didn't look too excited. So. Yeah, so I don't know. This chapter didn't seem like it had too much information that you guys wouldn't already know, but it does have those little like gold nuggets, right?
Yeah.
The next one, I believe, is handling events. It'll be very useful for when you guys start creating that game. The game itself comes from a company called Udacity. They have this what are called front-end nanodegree programs.
The game, you're talking about doing the hackathon thing? What game?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we're I don't know if you were here when I talked about it, but it's a game clone. So I'll give everyone like the skeleton for it, right? It doesn't come with like a scoring system. It doesn't come with anything. It's just the little character moving up, down, left, right, and then some little bugs moving left and right. But yeah, so that code comes from Udacity. The only modifications that it will have is that it'll come already ready for you to move your character up and down, and the little bugs are already pre-filled. But you guys can do whatever you want with it. But you will need to know request frame animation. You will have a canvas. The game engine is already pre-built for you with the basics that you need. There's even image caching included in there. So yeah, so it's pretty straightforward.
Is it gonna be using, is it using phaser or something?
That's what I was
No,
saying.
pure JavaScript. Pure JavaScript. So you guys get practice utilizing all these awesome new skills that you guys have.
Neat.
So again, once you're done with this, if you use phaser, life will feel a lot easier. So yeah.
So when does this take place?
So the hack day is the end of the month, the Saturday. So I guess last Saturday of the month? Yeah.
How do you determine the winner for the hackathon?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. So, I'm gonna bring a cat in the cat side.
We don't even need the
So the
pictures.
31st?
We're gonna need pictures, now there you go. I'm bringing the real thing in.
So the 31st?
Yeah, the 31st, perfect. If that's the last Saturday of the month, yes. So, what was I saying? So, determining the winner. That's hard, guys.